society organizations and the Ukrainian diaspora in the coordinated Nordic Support System for Ukraine. The panel will be moderated by Ms. Alina Sukovich, head of Nordic-Ukraine Forum. She brings together academic insight and hands-on experience in international advocacy and public dialogue. Over to you, Alina.
To the extent that we can produce it. Let me just introduce our fantastic speakers. So there is Orest, Bilous, who is the CEO of Boryviter, Center of Excellence. Then we have Jorun Sigrid Nossum, who is the director of Nansen Support Programme for Ukraine. Lolita Čigāne, senior advisor on EU integration from the EU Advisory Mission on Ukraine. We have Tymofiy, Brik, who is the rector of Kyiv School of Economics. We have Kristina Háfoss, Secretary General of the Nordic Council, and Friis, Bach, former member of the Parliament. Very glad to see you all. I would like to start with Jorun and ask you about the Nansen program. So generally, if you could tell us a bit of what the program is about, and reflect on how it has transformed through the years. Because I can imagine that in 2022 or 2023, it has been ad hoc, something that was developed rapidly, but probably since that time you had changed the scale or the vision. And if yes, could you please share already this transition that is happening?
No, thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation to come here. So the Nansen Support Programme is basically the name for the combined Norwegian support to Ukraine. So it combines both the military support and the civilian part. So when it says that I'm responsible for that, I'm responsible for the civilian part, so not on the military part. I think to your question, just a few things that I think were important for the Norwegian government from the start, and that was a quite soon realization that this was a situation where we had to stand for a longer time. So the Norwegian government decided to commit sort of for multi-year budgets into, at that time, 7 years, up to 2030. And I think that was an important signal to send to our Ukrainian partners, friends, government, and that we realize that this is not something that we do year by year, but we do this for a longer period. I think that was sort of the first really sort of important commitment from the Norwegian side. And secondly, to do that, you need to bring all political parties with you. So also because they were committing budgets, further than their own election period. So this is a program that has all political parties, and that is a wide community in any country, also in Norway. So that I think was also quite clever from the current government. So I think the combination of those two, both the long-term commitment and that you had all political parties on board, has been important, and also a very important signal to send to Ukraine. Then what is it all about? At that time, the financial envelope was much smaller than what it is today. It has increased quite drastically, and especially on the military side. But this is sort of subject to negotiations and adjustments from year to year. And I think that reflects sort of the key priority of the program. It is that it should be based on Ukrainian needs. But as you know, those who are to express those, and that is sort of pointing a little bit to your question on how do you sort of adjust along the way. So I think we are in a combination of sort of staying the course. So I think some of the sort of key priorities for Norway will probably remain in energy, on humanitarian support, etc. But what we can do when, which initiatives, which partners, I think those are the things that can change. So it's a combination of trying to keep sort of a long-term commitment and a course that you can probably stand on, also in terms of thematic priorities, but at the same time also adjust. There's a lot of dilemmas into that, but I think, there are many Ukrainians in the room, and I think you can sort of recognize that in conceptual sort of shifts between working on long term, but at the same time looking into what is possible today, who can do what is the capacity where, and I think also previous panels also today, the difficulties between prioritizing between areas. So I felt like the first panel you feel like, well, this is the most important thing, and the second panel you feel the same. So if we had the third panel on energy, I would feel that was the most crucial thing. So it is difficult to prioritize between these things and to really understand what is possible to do when.
Thank you for sharing. And if we will have time, it will be good to dig into this question on how their decisions are being suggested by what are their systems of making their decision made. But before that, I would like now to turn to Kristina and ask you about the Nordic Council. And basically, given the shift in geopolitical situation, I'm wondering if what lessons have the Nordic countries learned regarding political coordination in general, and at this scale, when we are talking about the Nordic Council and its cooperation, is it realistically possible to do different type of job that will not overlap each other? How do you understand and how do you truly unify the support and who is doing what? Coordination.
Thank you. Such a huge question. So how long do I have? But first and foremost, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. Looking forward to the discussion and hopefully also to get some good questions from the audience. Okay, what have we learned? In a very broad way, I can say that you always need good friends, but in times of uncertainty, where you don't feel safe right now, it really gets obvious that it's not enough that you just need them. It's not like nice to have. It's need to have both good friends and friends that you can trust. The Nordic Council is the Nordic parliamentarian cooperation. It's the 8 parliaments, the 8 countries are electing members of parliament into the Nordic Council. So all in all, it's 87 parliamentarians. And they are not just meeting once a year, they meet 5 times a year on shift in the Nordic countries. And when they meet, they discuss one thing: how do we strengthen the Nordic cooperation? What recommendations should we put forward to the Nordic governments? It can be on education, it could be on security, it can be on foreign policy, infrastructure, and so on. And this cooperation has been going on for not just 1 year or 10 years, it's been going on for 74 years. Next year we will have 75 years of Jubilee. And this has been a very unique platform for the Nordic politicians to meet and to make friendships and create this stable platform. And this is one thing we have learned, that during these hard times, that these stable platforms where our politicians meet and where they not just discuss what's right to do now, but also get a network and friendship that lasts over years has been extremely important. If I could say just a little bit about related to Ukraine, the Nordic Council acted right away, the same day, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Nordic Council President came with a public statement of full support for Ukraine. At every meeting, 5 times a year, when they meet, we have put Ukraine on the agenda. And we have had, for example, we had President Zelensky as a guest speaker at one of our sessions. We have had several meetings between the Nordic Council President and Ruslan Stefanchuk, Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament. We have had the Ukrainian Ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark several of our meetings trying to connect and have debates on how can Nordic parliamentarians and also ministers and government push for even more support and also coordinate support. You were asking that second question. I can say very shortly, maybe we'll get back to it. Of course, there will be some overlap, but generally the Nordic governments are having a very close coordination, close dialogue. I think every time you see a minister, a Nordic minister in the TV, they are saying, like, not every time, but very often, they're saying, oh, I just talked to my Nordic colleague, or I just met with my Nordic colleague. They are really trying to coordinate things. So like bilaterally, but also on these Nordic platforms like the Nordic Council ministers, where the minister meets, they are trying to coordinate as good as possible to make the total Nordic support for Ukraine so fruitful and good as possible.
Thank you for a very brief and clear introduction both of the Nordic Council and the way how Ukraine is already being integrated into the process. And now I would like to ask Tymofiy Brik. So, as the Rector of EC, you are working with an intellectual foundation for Ukraine's recovery. You are working with people who will be building Ukraine tomorrow or doing this already now. So I'm wondering, when we talk about moving from a network to a long-term system, how critical is human capital in general, and what is the role of Nordics in support when we talk about Kyiv School of Economics?
Yeah, thanks. It's a great event. Thank you for your invitation. Look, I think there are very few people who doubt that human capital matters. But still, even to understand this fundamental claim, I think I've spent a lot of years of my life just to get it, that this is not just a mantra, that human capital matters. I felt it very first time in my life during the immigration. So, you know, my trajectory was very simple. I was a typical kind of early stage academic. I was writing papers, my papers were rejected. I thought I would be, you know, a scholar or something like that. And then I really wanted to quit. I wanted to quit academia and move to some other industries. And then when the invasion started, I realized that universities are the most fundamental places in Ukraine, because these are the hubs that create human capital. And human capital is not just about skills. It's not just people who are smart. You know, these are people who are also connected through social networks. These are people who are connected through culture, and they have motivation, and they have skin in the game, and they are smart enough to pivot. You know, most of the people who are very successful now, either in civil society or in military or in government, those people have very different backgrounds. You know, some of them were artists or people from various businesses, but now they're fighting, and now they produce, engineering products. And the same can be said about our university. We were a small university focused on management, but now we are working with engineers, with mathematicians, etc. So it is very, very crucial to have this smart, motivated, skilled people who can come together, solve problems together, and this can actually be very crucial during such existential crises as wars, and that's why universities matter. So you asked a question about the support. Yeah, I think the Nordic countries have supported Ukraine in terms of education and human capital development quite a lot. Either through direct support of the government and governmental programs, or through supporting NGOs or private universities. Our university was supported by SIDA for many, many years. We work now with the governments of Sweden and Denmark directly, working on research, on sanctions, etc. So yeah, I think the lessons that I learned that is, and why Nordic model is very efficient, is that you do a lot of research, and I think you understand local landscape more than others. So in Ukraine, sometimes it's very difficult to understand context. You have to be there. Because usually the way supporting education and science works through typical categorization. You know, public universities support public universities. Engineers support engineers. Private investors support private sector. This is a typical game all around the world. But in Ukraine, everything is mixed, you know. It is important, like our university is private, but we work with governmental programs universities, public universities like aviation, Kyiv Aviation Institute, but they're famous now for providing managerial skills to military people. Kyiv School of Economics does engineering. So things are very mixed. It's not clear how to operate in this system, and that's why Nordic program, I think, programs have been very successful because you do a lot of research, you talk with people on the ground, and you take risks, and you still care about accountability. Okay, we will support them, but we will check them. We'll have audit, and then we'll see. So I think this is a crucial model in building human capital. And I will conclude with one very clear example. Take Ukraine in 2013 and Ukraine in 2022. In 2013, when Crimea was taken and the war started, Ukrainian economy collapsed way more than it collapsed in 2022. Why? Because back then we did not have such professional government, Ministry of Finance, Education, National Bank of Ukraine was not as professional. And it took us 5 or 6 years to produce new generation of policymakers, economists, macroeconomists who were working then in Ukraine in 2022 to prevent some of the catastrophes. And we were able to do that actually with the support of CEDA. So, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Orest, I would like now to turn to you and ask you to tell a bit more about Boryviter, because I know you as the CEO of the military school. Now it's already a center of excellence, and I know that you're growing fast. And please tell us a bit about Boryviter, and also, do you have any connection to the Nordic countries? Do they cooperate with you? What is your experience of that?
That's a lot of questions, Eva. Thank you.
Yes.
So I will speak from the experience of our organization. We started just 1-something years ago. It was April 2022 in response for very immediate need for training. I would grow up 3 times, 4 times, in just a few days, and it was just the training capability for an accent, and we started to help them. Until today, we trained around 36,000 members who do not work with civilians, and to put it into perspective, it's comparable and in some cases larger than full-scale armies do not have. We started as an emergency batch. And for now, we consider ourselves the institutional part of the whole Ukrainian defense ecosystem, as many other Ukrainian organizations which survived during these 4 years. And speaking on the cooperation with Nordic, yes, we do have a lot of cooperation. It's quite fruitful. We do have common projects. Mostly there's a lot of goodwill. And there is many resources, and things in many cases go well and smooth. But there are a few things which we consider could be done a little bit in a different way, and it's a speed. It's a different speed because we usually when we start we do some events outside in Europe for 2 years, and when we start explaining any military ecosystems, we start from comparing wartime conditions and everything changed in wartime. The speed with which Ukrainian government is now moving is absolutely the maximum they can do. Just to compare, for some understanding, in Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, during this 51 months, it was 37 different individuals who held the post of deputy minister for 51 months. It means 48 appointments in 4 years. If you compare with, for example, Vietnam War, it was 10 changes in the Ministry of Defense during 20 years in the US. This is absolutely the maximum speed the government can do. And if they start to do faster, they will just act as a startup. And that's not going to work. We need some liability from government, we need stability, we need institutionalization. And this is where civil society comes. It doesn't have bureaucracy, it doesn't have speed limits, suddenly good. And it's like something in the middle between the front line, which needs solutions today, tomorrow, and in a week, between the government, which gives the solutions in months and quarters, and between the donors who sometimes act a little bit longer and like work years while the project is
And I would like to ask Kristina. So Orest already mentioned the speech, right? With very precious aspects of delivery. And Denmark was among the countries that was very quick with the decision to support Ukraine with the full-scale invasion. So you as a person with a political experience know the processes from inside. Can you please share them? But Denmark was also one of those who have chosen the Danish model and chosen particular city to support, and it was Mykolaiv. Can you just tell a bit more on this partnership with Mykolaiv in the terms of what processes were good, or what you would have changed? So what works in this sort of activities when you support the city and decide to work that way?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the invitation to come here and allow me also to, again here, to state my strong support for Ukraine. I did my best in Parliament. I did my best during the election campaign. I think the organizers took this photo from the election campaign where I wore the Ukrainian bishop every single day during the entire election campaign, because I wanted Ukraine to be with me in any single place I was during the election campaign. Now I'm no longer in Parliament, but I still do my best, and I have a small company, Warfare, where we will now start import of different products from Ukraine. I hope so. If any of you have good ideas, come to me. The approach Denmark took in Mykolaiv was very much an approach to support a city, a region in a coordinated, structured way. And I think this has a lot of good elements in it. You can leave a bigger footprint, you can create stronger partnerships, and I think this has worked out well. A lot of good things have happened in Mykolaiv because of the Danish support. But if I look back, there are things that I would do differently, and now I'll take on my critical hat here to evaluate. Because when we started the approach in Mykolaiv, we were told that we should avoid to channel our support through the local authorities because of fear of corruption. That was absolutely what we were told. So it was important that we build up some structures besides the local authorities in order to channel the support. And I believe in what you call a rights-based approach, and I believe in what you call localization in the humanitarian field. And that means that you should do your very best to channel your support through local structures, local civil society, local authorities, in order to build local capacity. And I'm not quite sure to what extent we have actually managed to do this in Mykolaiv. And if I were to redo it, I think I would have taken a step to support, to do budget support through the local authorities. I know it would have come with a huge risk of corruption, of mismanagement, of failure. But if you do not dare, especially in conflict-affected countries, if you do not dare to build the capacity of local authorities in order to build accountability with their own community and constituency, it is very likely that in the long run you might fail. So I would have done this differently. And then I would have done even more to support local civil society. Civil society is absolutely crucial. I've been part of civil society in Denmark my entire life, and I still am. Civil society is crucial for, of course, building social support, for the social fabric, the social cohesion, and also to shaping the social accountability, being the watchdog, keeping an eye on the state and the local authorities. And this is what I believe creates change in society. If you have authorities that have the means to be accountable to their own people, and if you have civil society that have the ability to keep authorities accountable. This is where you get state building in a crucial sense, and we perhaps failed to do this in a proper way in Mykolaiv. Because a lot of the support to Mykolaiv has gone through international organizations, and they're doing a good job. I don't want to criticize them, but it just leaves a different footprint. We have channeled it to the UN and to international civil society organizations. And if I was to redo it, I think I would have chosen a different pathway where we have done the budget support to local authorities, building their capacity, building their financial mechanisms, their institutional transparency and their accountability, and then civil society to be the watchdog locally, to keep an eye on them, and to do everything civil society must and can do, especially in a conflict-affected context. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, Lolita, I have a question to you, and Kristina already mentioned the role of civil society in Ukraine, and you also spent quite, as far as I know, quite a lot of time in Ukraine, so you know the integration processes and what is really needed. Can you please reflect on where the role of CSOs in Ukraine is crucial at the moment? What exactly is the help of Nordic CSOs and the Ukrainian diaspora? So what is effective, what is not in the process of reforming and EU integration?
Thank you so much, Alina. Thank you to organizers for inviting me here. This has already been really fascinating. Thank you for your very deep thoughts and very, very interesting take on matters. I am indeed currently based in Kyiv. I work for EU Advisory Mission as a senior advisor in EU integration, exactly. So my interaction with Ukrainian civil society is very tight because I think that many of you have heard about the sandwich effect when it comes to Ukraine, yes? The Ukrainian institutions and authorities have to be pressed from two sides. One is civil society and the other one is the international community. And by pressing and tickling and calling for accountability, we actually ensure that the progress is made. And I really agree to the fact that the progress has been tremendous, including through this awful war of oppression. Many areas in Ukraine have become really very professionalized. And I can speak from my personal experience. I was a young Latvian civil society activist, anti-corruption fighter. When I first went to Kyiv, that was before the Orange Revolution. And at home, at that time, Latvia was preparing to join the European Union. And our prospects were grim, really grim. Because at that point, my country, Latvia, was reputed as having very high level of the so-called state capture, oligarch-dominated economy, and in general, the unofficial narrative was that Estonia would join European Union, Lithuania would join NATO, and Latvia would remain somewhere in the middle. And fortunately, we had strong enough support, including from Nordic countries, very, very strong support from our Latvian diaspora that was mostly based on refugees during the Second World War, when the second Soviet occupation was approaching. These people realized that they will be just sent to Siberia. So they built their communities outside Latvia with the hope that the time will come when they will be needed. And they were called for action very seriously in those times. And we understood that we just needed to struggle. So I was a young anti-corruption activist working for Transparency International with very tough political money projects. I came to Kyiv and we were liaising with our colleagues from civil society organizations, and they had a lot of enthusiasm. We had a lot of enthusiasm and a little bit of professionalism. They had the former. And we know what happened to the Orange Revolution and so on. So I was so happy to come back to Kyiv now in in these tragic circumstances and to encounter such a professional, well-organized, vocal, clever, and also cooperative, militant but cooperative civil society. So I think this is really a wonderful asset. And this is a wonderful asset, not only, of course, a wonderful asset inside Ukraine, but also a wonderful asset that Ukraine has in the Nordic countries. And if I'm speaking again a little bit personally, I am also a product of Nordic-Baltic cooperation. Because in 1993, I had a chance to live in a Swedish family. I was just a young ex-Soviet girl, but the speed mattered. I learned Swedish over that summer. I became a Swedish translator because we were receiving a lot of Nordic help, and it was much needed. So basically, my first understanding of civil participation, of democracy, of cooperation, of how modern democracy works came from Sweden and generally the Nordic model. Although it was very comfortable at that time, being almost fluent in Swedish, I decided to go back to Latvia to work as a civil society activist, and also I was a member of parliament for 8 years in Latvia. And of course, these roots of having learned the Nordic experience were very informative for the work that I did domestically, but also now in Ukraine. So I think this is extremely important that we have this good cooperation. And I happened to have a very deep, interesting conversation with a former Swedish diplomat, Lars Freden. He was the first ambassador of Sweden to Latvia in the beginning of the 90s. And of course, when he came to Latvia, he knew the Baltics. He felt that we had a very distinct identity and that we had been wronged by the Soviet Union. But he actually confessed that up until recently, he did not know the identity of Ukraine. Somehow they all blended together. And now in his 70s plus, he took his bicycle and went by bicycle twice during summer along the front line in Ukraine. He wrote a book about it. And he said, and he again and again underlines in this book for the Swedish public, how distinct Ukrainian identity is. And he is one of very strong advocates, and I think that every Ukrainian voice that sounds and lives outside Ukraine, especially in the Nordic countries, this is your duty to talk about this very distinct, very juicy, sometimes wild, extremely creative identity, Ukrainian identity that I also have a lot to experience in Kyiv. Kyiv is so rich in culture, cultural events, exhibitions, everything. One of the previous panelists said, do come to Bilous, it's fascinating. And I say the same, it's fascinating. Of course, there are error alerts, but it's all wonderful. It's just really so vibrant in many ways. So thank you.
Lolita already mentioned that NGOs are very professional in Ukraine, and indeed, we know that they do a lot of work that is crucial for the future of the country. There is also the NGOs that are representing Ukraine in the Nordic-Baltic region, and my question to all our Nordic representatives or Nordic-Baltic representatives who would like to address it, basically, do you think that on the political level you hear enough of the Ukrainian voices, and do you have the direct contact with those who represent Ukrainian diaspora, and if not, or if yes, do we need any special tools for make them being more vocal and maybe not to be perceived only as aid recipients? Does anyone want to reflect on this? Yes, please.
Thank you, and thank you very much for very inspiring speeches. I think we hear you, but I also think that the world is on fire. There are so many conflicts going on, so many places. So we need to hold Ukraine on the top of the agenda in every way. The Nordic Council has these 87 parliamentarians from 8 parliaments, and they are very focused on this. How can they, in different ways, by being active in national parliaments, by writing articles, by being vocal about the Ukraine, help keeping Ukraine on the agenda. And it's not always easy for the parliamentarians. If you look at the Nordic region, the geopolitical situation is like pushing from all sides. One thing is war in Europe, and even having several countries wanting maybe a Europe based on other values than we would like in the Nordic countries. Then we have the changes in the north, in the Arctic, which again demands a lot from the Nordic countries if they want changes there to go in the direction that we all want. We have been attacked from Russia, not like with military attacks, but hybrid threats, so many years. And it started long before the wholesale war in Ukraine. I'll never forget, in January 2022, we visited together with the Nordic Council presidency and some members of Parliament from European Parliament at this European Center of Hybrid Threats in Helsinki. And they were making a presentation of all the hybrid threats that they were seeing in the Nordic countries, but also in several European countries from Russia. And this was like a month before the full-scale invasion, but it was like bursting with hybrid threats, and we have seen more and more of that. And then one thing is south, north, east. Lately we have also had threats from our allies against Greenland, an important part of the Nordic region. So the Nordic, both parliamentarians and governments are having, they don't forget, they have a lot to do. And Ukraine is so important to put on the agenda and hold on the agenda. What the Nordic Council has tried to do is, as I mentioned earlier, try to have like Ukraine as one of the agenda points, very meetings, debating on how could the parliamentarians be even more active and helping Ukraine, and also pushing the governments to do more. As I mentioned, the Nordic Council works a lot like a parliament, actually. It's not legislative, not legislation when they finish voting on the proposal. It's a recommendation, but still the governments over time try to follow these recommendations. And they can put forward also questions in writing that the ministers have to answer. And one thing, for example, the Nordic Council has done is send the questions to all the Nordic governments saying what kind of support can you give in Ukraine, and then they collected all the information to see, okay, how does it look? Is it good enough? And then they can ask the ministers to come into dialogue with parliamentarians to push for more. Just to mention one thing, 3 weeks ago, if I can mention that, the Nordic Council met for a session in the Stortinget, the Norwegian Parliament, to focus on crisis preparedness, and invited the Vice Health Minister of Ukraine for to be one of the guest speakers to tell the Nordic parliamentarians and also some ministers were there from the Nordics, and also the Prime Minister of Norway, to tell about Ukraine's work with ensuring that how could we have a health sector functioning during wartime. So, as you mentioned, it's not just receiving Ukraine receiving support, it's also how could we learn from all the work we were doing, because Ukraine is surely a front runner on how to show and practice how we have all these things, both education, health sector, and so on, functioning during wartime. So that was a very fruitful session where we got some information on how we be better in the Nordic countries, better prepared. And as we all know, drones attacks have also been a short time ago. Again, Ukraine is front runner on that, how to protect those from that. So I think there are a lot of things we are doing, but there are a lot of things we do also to have like always.
Thank you. Well, the question was, is the diaspora strong enough? And I believe that the diaspora here is enormously strong, and I'm very happy to see that this see Ukrainians all over the place, in the political sphere, in the business sphere, in the civil society, engaging, using themselves. You know, in my small company, the most hard-working staff I have is Lolita, a Ukrainian woman. I've never had a hard-working staff in my entire life. She comes exactly on time, or she bicycles. She works for 8 hours without lunch break and goes home. And she's an amazing colleague for us. And I think we find these Ukrainians all over the Danish society. I believe we should lead it even stronger to build ties, because we need to build ties right now to support Ukraine, to ensure, I said, a strong response to the Russian aggression and all of it. And there, Denmark, we have been in the forefront of the Danish model, as you called it. You know, we were the first country to buy military equipment in Ukraine for Ukraine. It was a decisive model that helps to strengthen the Ukrainian defense industry significantly. It helped also to engage Danish companies investing and engaging in Ukraine. And now we have Danish Model 2.0, where Ukrainian companies are now investing in Denmark. And I think this is absolutely transformative, that way of thinking. And now before I talked about the Ukrainian authorities and civil society, the local civil society, how important it is to strengthen those, but it's even more important perhaps to also strengthen the Ukrainian business society. They are and must be there to build Ukraine after the war, and a strong Ukrainian business society is also crucial to pave the way for a strong engagement with the European Union. And all of this hopefully should come together in allowing us very soon after the war to see Ukraine as a full member of the European Union. We need to utilize every single level of our engagement and our partnership and our friendship to make this happen. Because if not, the disappointment in Ukraine will be immense. If it does not pave the way, fighting for freedom and democracy for more than 4 years, if it does not pave the way to a future with freedom and democracy and economic growth, then it would have been in vain. So let us utilize all our forces together to make this happen, stop the war, and see Ukraine as a close friend, partner, and member of the European Union. And with this, unfortunately, I have to leave a little bit early. I had said to the organizers, this would probably be my last words here, but thank you for all your commitment and engagement, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so Alina, you asked for a vibrant discussion, so let me try. I will try to reflect a bit on some things that were said. So I think it's just very organic. It's just the nature of our gathering that most of us represent civil society, private organizations, so we don't represent government. So, we sit here and we say that our civil society is great and maybe that government needs a bit more accountability. But I think we should be a bit more self-critical, and I want to look at specifically on this concept of sandwich approach. Because I think I understand it, but I also come from civil society background, but I think it doesn't work anymore for two reasons. First of all, I think it creates wrong incentives in a way that what Ukraine needs a strong government. We must have strong institutions, and this is a plus with the European Union. So I cannot imagine a country where government is always, incentivized to be a bad guy versus civil society, which is incentivized to be a good guy. So yes, we have an excellent civil society, but that's just because it is a substitute. So we need to build systems, so it's not just the civil society that carries things, but government carries things. And another reason why I don't like it anymore is I think because we still live in this mentality of this Orange Revolution, Maidan Revolution. When the government is bad and civil society is good and we have to fight each other. But it's not the case anymore. And when I think about myself and my peers back in 2013, if I ask myself the question, how many people do I know that are really good macroeconomists? How many people I know that are good in political science and sociological surveys? How many of them are in civil society and in government? Back in 2013, 0 people were in the government and everyone were in civil society. But today, it's very opposite. I think I know more macroeconomists in the government than in civil society. So when we have this sandwich approach, we should not forget about accountability as well. Because the question is to what extent all parties who are mixed in this sandwich are equally professional and have legitimacy to push each other. So yeah, I guess my point is that we should not be naive and sugarcoat things. Of course, there are many issues with the government. There are many issues with civil society. I just want us to always be, in line with what is happening right now in Ukraine. And I don't believe the sandwich approach is relevant anymore. But everything else, of course, I agree.
If I may, since I provoked this reaction, and I actually think this is a very good discussion because obviously someone has to graduate from this sandwich approach, and someone has to graduate because of natural circumstances, because one of the very important actors on behalf of the international community, US is no longer there, and we have to grow up in Europe, in the Nordic region, and also in Ukraine. We have to grow up and understand that the bad or the good or whatever police officer has exited the room, so we have to take care of that ourselves. And that is not necessarily bad because the foundations are very good. In Latvia, when we were also in the sandwich situation before we joined EU and NATO, when there was a demand from international community to strengthen our anti-corruption institutions and also the civil society tried to do so, we created a powerful institution, our anti-corruption bureau, which is generally quite capable of doing good quality investigations now. And I have to say that I have observed the same in Ukraine also. Perhaps some of you followed the protest that happened last year in July, because there were attempts, serious attempts, actually astonishingly intensively negative attempts to diminish the anti-corruption institutions and their independence. But then there was a very quick and fast reaction, specifically from younger generation of Ukrainians. And now we see that these institutions are actually quite able, independently, to tackle some very serious cases. Of course, there are issues which can be disputed and say that things are not moving quite as fast as they should, but these things take time. It takes time to grow up. And this is definitely experience from Latvia. It takes time to grow up. We have been in European Union and NATO for already 22 years, and we are still growing up. So.
I just want to remember something reminded me here that fantastic concept which is in Nordic countries is total defense. It's turned out suddenly in the second year of full-scale invasion that we are just testing this concept and in actual real environment. In the most brutal war after the Second World War. And saying this, we have to start to remember what it started from. It started from 2013 when the people came out to the streets in Kyiv, the Maidan, to support the European association. So far, it was probably the most bloodiest membership application to the European Union nowadays. And this testing of total defense concept, it showed us that it's not an army who is fighting. It's not only the army who is fighting. It's everyone. It's everything. Everything in the country, civil society, whatever society, it's Danish, it's double rooted, whatever product. It's very weak in Ukraine now, but everything is involved in very high speed in fighting for independence. What we also found during this time that in the very beginning we had such a big spike of energy from all the people around, which is usually big functioning of the country. And
Good. And basically, yeah, we're running out of time, but I want to have the last quick question to all of you. And if you wanted to, but you will follow up immediately after the question. So, what is basically your experience in terms of what you learned for our Nordic Baltic partners? What have you learned from Ukraine? What lessons have you taken? And for Ukrainian partners, is there anything that you are learning from the Nordic Baltic partners? Is there any activities, any ideological perspective that is something that can be useful for Ukraine? And we will start with.
Okay, thank you. So I'll respond to that, but at the same time pick up a bit of those different issues in the previous discussion. So first of all, and I'm glad Christian also mentioned, how he would have done or thought through things differently if he was to do it again. And I think sort of that way of reflecting is extremely important. And I think also the international part. We are working a lot through. We're a small country. Our presence in Ukraine is limited, so we are working a lot through the international partners, and they have also changed. So, it's not sort of a static picture. At the beginning, when the humanitarian actors came in, and they brought their experience from other humanitarian crises, and they realized that, well, this is not the same. Here we have a market functioning, institutions are functioning, this is not a state that has collapsed. All these different things that are quite sort of important characteristics to understand. So they have also changed, which means a different type of engagement with government, a different type of engagement with local communities, different type of engagement with civil society. Not to say it's perfect, but it has definitely changed. So I think just to continue sort of that learning, I think it's important. Just also wanted to comment on the role of civil society. Obviously, the withdrawal of US funding was critical. And they were really, I was surprised. We all know that US funding has been huge, but it was everywhere. So of course that created a kind of a gap that we also tried to fill partly. We can't replace all of that, but we tried to fill it partly with establishing our own scheme for civil society in Ukraine. But I think the discussion is interesting here on what is the role of civil society, and we should also be a bit careful on sort of creating structures that gives them a role that normally is a role of the government. So trying to find a good balance here with supporting whatever, and also understanding that the situation now is critical. Maybe they should do things that is normally sort of basic services given by the government. But I think it's an important discussion that we should also keep an eye on. And finally, what have we learned? Definitely something on speed. Because I think that is, I started by saying something about trying to, looking for short-term solutions, but at the same time keeping sort of a long perspective. And I think that is what impresses me the most, that you every day need to just go out and do whatever you can do that day, but at the same time manage to innovate, to think longer. It's extremely impressive, and I think we all have a lot to learn from that. When it comes to, I think, that sort of donor and recipient relation, I don't think Ukraine has ever sort of accepted that type of dynamic, which is good. So I think we're in a totally different situation when it comes to real mutual relationship. And we always talk about mutual relationships, but in practice, I think this is a case where that is the only way to go about that. So when our Prime Minister visited Ukraine in February this year, it was sort of established what we call a strategic partnership with 3 areas. That is in military technology, that is on energy, and also on preparedness. And then of course you can put a lot into that. So I think that is the start of course, Ukraine, you have to do your job where you are now, but it is really interest from our countries also to learn. And I think finally you asked, how do you make decisions? And I think it's a variety of sources. One thing is of course governmental discussions and debates at high political level, but for us, different voices, because as you know, there is not one voice in Ukraine either. So for example, for us to have dialogue with academic institutions, with civil society organizations, with diaspora, it's
really important. Thanks.
It's important that it's a strategic partnership that we're talking about. Well, so everyone else, if you would like to please do the final comments, reflecting on what we were discussing, or tell about their experience that you take from Ukraine or from the Nordics. Who would like? If anyone, please.
Yeah, I would just like to say that, and I think I speak on behalf of all of us, that I think the people of Ukraine have been a huge inspiration to all of us. To show such strength and to manage to have like a society that functions even though we are in a war time. It's, I think we have so much to learn. Total preparedness was mentioned here. That has been one of the main focuses for the last couple of years now at the Nordic Council. This year, Finland and Åland have the presidency. In the Nordic region, Finland has like always been focusing on total preparedness. They have never like thought, now it's peace and we don't have to be prepared. They have always been prepared. So we have looked to Finland, but now we're looking to Ukraine because you are front runners in Europe on total preparedness. So we have so much to learn from you on that. If we could just add, in regards of the youth, it was mentioned here, and also combined with the civil society. We have this Youth Nordic Council. It was established back in 1971. It's youth politicians meeting every year and participating actually in all the meetings of the Nordic Council also. They have established also relations to youth leaders in Ukraine and established this democracy youth forum every summer and also on a regular basis meeting. I think it's so important that we establish this strong connection and strategic partnership between the young people because to give them hope and to give them inspiration and to hopefully create peace and stable growth in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Youth is indeed very important group of people to work with. Timothy, you wanted to introduce?
Yeah, so the question was, what have I learned, what have we learned? So I'll be talking also as a sociologist and as a rector of university. I think every society has moved through different stages of kind of evolution of public discourse and thinking about what is crucial to govern society. And I think many years ago, public discourse was that, it's all about people. It's all about human capital. There are good people and bad people. We can educate people to make them better, or we can hire better people, So it was very focused on individual qualities. Then we moved to the understanding that it's not just about people, it's also about institutions. Institutions matter, reforms matter, decentralization reform or public procurement. All these institutions make our society stronger and durable. But I think now there is a transition also to understanding that culture matters, because institutions, they are also fragile. And sometimes institutions and democratic institutions, they can be destroyed. So you need people who care about democracy, and you need people who will come together to defend democracy. So the question is how to build this group of people who have a shared identity and culture, and they just, they care enough to act and to defend institutions. So this is a big question, I think, in the Ukrainian public discourse now. We are in this stage. And I think we learned quite a lot from Nordic model in the sense of the work which was present during the previous panel, accountability. Accountability matters a lot, because regardless if you work with your peer or with government, with a person from your neighborhood or another neighborhood, in order to build kind of lasting trust and capacity to come together and solve problems, you have to build this trust, and trust is not possible, without accountability. So this is my takeaway.
I want to add a bit about the human resource. Actually, we admire a lot what Tymofiy and these institutions is doing. They're creating opportunities for Ukrainians to make the country, because it's really difficult to live in this country now. And the very existence of such organizations and academia, they help people to stay and to grow. And we were talking about learning from Ukraine, and this is very important, and we're really, really proud that Europe can learn something from us. even if it came from such a terrible thing as a war. But what we want also to say that in many cases, this learning comes to just extracting of experience. And it's doing state by state, one by one, not always coordinated. What we would try to suggest and probably add to this, it would be really good if we can switch from direct extracting lessons, direct extracting experience and people from Ukraine to institutionalizing this capability inside Ukraine. Because if we take it fragmentary, one by one, most probably none of the countries will build the proper capability. If we keep it in Ukraine, if we help to fund it in Ukraine, if we help to grow it and institutionalize it inside Ukraine, it will be the benefit of Ukraine. And when Europe is trying to import these things from the big Ukraine, at the moment it's made the very system which is learning from weaker. So what we think, what we consider is good, probably point of view for now that can be imported, the momentum. We are acting on a totally different pace, on extremely different speed. It's really unusual to come after 3 months in Kyiv to Europe and understand that you've done in a day 3 things, and in Kyiv you do 33 things. And it's normal, it's normal to have this pace of speed. But this is the momentum. This momentum can change really, really a lot. So this momentum can be exported. Experience not in full. So I just want to bring you the idea that most of the civil society and most of these organizations in Ukraine, which are now working on this at very high speed, will be very, very glad to share the momentum with the whole Europe and to help you build your own things. It will be a big pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. Just very briefly, I think that we are all learning from Ukraine how to stand strong and not to allow anyone else but yourself to define yourself. And I think that for us, for Nordic and Baltic region, this is very important to see clearly the things for what they are. And in that respect, I remember the times when we Baltic politicians were speaking in some international forums, and I was approached by some people sometimes saying, when are you going to get tired of your Russophobia? And we said, never. Never. And now we need to I think this has been a huge learning lesson for all of us in the Nordic, and I really want to go back to something that Kristina, you said, that it's very nice to have friends, but it's even more important that you have close friends who really understand. But this is not just Russophobia. It has facts, factual basis, and this is why we have to stand together, both Nordic, Baltic, with Ukraine. Thank you very much.
The remaining couple of minutes, let's take for Q&A. So if you would like to address your question, please do that very briefly, and we will collect some of your questions, and please then feel free to reply to your request, please.
Jorun Sigrid Blue Yellow, Lithuania, the biggest NGO in Europe, Union, providing military support to Ukraine at this point. Unfortunately, Christian left. That was actually the one I wanted to address this, but it's about decentralization. Everybody in Ukraine knows that the Danes are in Mykolaiv. Everybody knows that. Everybody also knows that Kyiv asked the Danes to keep the money go through Kyiv because you can't trust the local whatever they are. Which went to kind of like a sort of nice, but not as efficient as it should have been. And me as being extremely decentralized, where I'm working all over Ukraine, all over the front line, doing lots of things. And I see all these like local initiatives, locals, shall we say, base could be in Zaporizhzhia, could be in Kharkiv, could be in Kherson, could be in so Tymofiy, and everybody asking for they had great people, have proven themselves, they're vetted, and they all lack resources. Everybody, every single one. And then less is more. You can provide them, say, with a million, whatever, money, euros, whatever. But no, because Kyiv takes it all. It's all centralized. What do you think about decentralizing a part of the Scandinavian support effort for Ukraine, providing opportunities for serious financing on a decentralized regional level? Or is that impossible?
Question. So, question on decentralization. Any other questions that we will take immediately? Perfect. So, yeah, this is good. Yes, good.
Alena, Ukraine's Future Danish organization. I just probably have a question to Kristina Jorun to get your comments on. Now, Orest, he has mentioned several times, Timothy as well, that it's a high tempo people have been working in Ukraine on, and the severity, the brutality of this war, and efficiency, you have also, ladies have mentioned, is been recognized that it also comes with very high cost. I talk about mental health. And in that terms, are there any recommendations or policies that have been focused to be set on or support as well in that direction? So if you send weapons, we also have to sort of take care of people who operate them. And maybe specific also group of people, those are the veterans who come back, they are the carriers of the most extensive knowledge of the modern war, and they need to be reintegrated in the civil society. They mostly are young men and women who have lives ahead of them. They can really work and share knowledge and educate as well. Yeah,
perfect. So we have the question of decentralization and mental health. And Timothy has a comment.
Yeah, on decentralization.
Yes, good. Yes.
Yeah, so decentralization is such a big topic. It's more complicated than people would think.
We know this, but I want your answer.
Yeah. So I've been working on it from the perspective of economics, so decentralization of government, public health, procurement. I used to be a big fan of decentralization, advocacy and scientific papers on it. So we know there are a lot of facts and evidence that decentralization created, more democratic practices, more transparency. And I remember that Americans didn't like it, because usually in the United States the approach was that it didn't work in Afghanistan, so it should not work in Ukraine. So they didn't trust local government, even though local government was kind of more efficient in Ukraine. However, and I really want to say that there are many, many good arguments that during the war, decentralization should be rolled back for reasons as security, but also for reasons as free riding issue. Free riding issue happens during crisis and wars very often. So there are communities who would try to kind of, avoid their responsibilities. Like we don't want to accept displaced people, for instance. Or when you need to move money from one region to another, or think about taxation reform, decentralization can actually hurt you. So the government had good reasons to kind of roll back decentralization a bit, not because they're kind of evil or stupid, but because there is like a reason for it. But what you say is different. What you say is that you want international donors to be more regionally present. And here I salute you. I think it's very important, and I think this will help a lot. And I think, from my understanding, the government is not going to block such ideas, because it's about international actors going to the.
That's the impression.
Yeah.
That's the impression that they're blocking.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say for a context, so people know about this.
No, just very brief. Just two things from Norwegian side. We decided not to go into one region like Denmark did, and it will be interesting in the longer run to see sort of what type of models work well. But at decentralization as sort of a concept and as a dialogue with the authorities, I think it's often referred to as decentralization reform as something very successful, and of course, sort of the backbone of that is critical. But I think for us, the dialogue with our partners on what type of priorities are they doing in which regions and why those regions, because as I think it was you said, context matters. It's difficult to understand sort of the whole pattern here of who is influencing on what.
Because you're not there, you're not on location. You sit in Kyiv, and you should go to Kharkiv. Stay there for a week, but you are not doing it. You are not doing it.
No, but as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, we are not. That's
But maybe you should. Maybe you should. I'm sorry. I'm extremely frustrated. After 3 weeks in this war, I got a request from Budanov for javelins because they were all given to the armed force of Ukraine because this was centralized, because the U.S. wanted like that. So I have a couple of stories. Here's the point. You are not where you should be. You stay in Kyiv.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, but I mean, sorry for being a little like, get out there and see what's going on.
We have the platform for discussing, and it's crucial to talk about this.
Absolutely. Should we just comment on health topic as well? I think health holistically, but also on the mental part, is sort of an increased. I think it's an increased attention on that by all parties. What that actually will, I don't think we fully understand what that will do in terms of consequences. One thing is now, but what comes after. And there's a lot of focus on veterans, but also on veterans' families. So the numbers, of course, are extreme. We're also setting up now on sort of rehabilitation, but understood in a wider sense. So no, but I mean, I'm glad you raised it. We have to really focus a lot on it here, but definitely a point that will, a topic that will be receiving a lot of attention.
If I just may mention the extent of it, there are official reports saying that the WHO on 25 that says after that one phase there will be every second Ukrainian in the Kyiv land support. So I mean the extent of it is quite huge.
Thank you very much. I realized that both the title and all the aspect that we've taken is really like a big conference or not a one-day discussion, not 1 hour discussion as well. So, but on this note, I would like to thank you all for your contribution, and thank you very much for the critical and important experience that you shared. So please help me to make a round of warm applause to our.
And as usual, we have certain gifts for our guests, so please come and collect. My colleagues will help to distribute them. And in the meantime, before we start moving around, I wanted to say that our event soon will approach its end, but before we finish, I'd like to have on the stage the co-organizers of the event, one by one, to provide some summarizing remarks and reflections on the summit. I understand that we have 5 organizations, as I mentioned, and listening to 5 reflections could be an endurance test. But they are experienced people in building civil society organizations in the Nordics, so their opinion definitely worth listening to. So I would like to ask on the stage. Sorry. Okay. You are risking losing the audience. Just saying. Thank you so much. Thank you for waiting for us. So I would like to ask Ms. Yulia Kindra, the head of Ukrainian Dialogues, on the stage. Please, the floor is yours.
Dear all, thank you very much to the speakers, moderators, guests from Ukraine for fruitful discussions today. We have heard many important insights from the experts. We invited not simply to repeat what has already been said in textbooks, reports, headlines, but also to share some deeper insights, institutional experience, academic and research expertise, personal, what is important, first-hand experience. We wanted their words to become guidance for all of us, state, governmental institutions, and also civil society organizations. These are not instructions, but it's tools for better understanding the field we operate in, the field where democratic values are under threat. Because at this point, I don't believe that only Ukraine is the battlefield. I believe the entire democratic system is under attack. And as Mika Salo mentioned today, that there is a hybrid situation, not peace, in Nordic Baltic region. And Kristina Háfoss in the final panel has confirmed this. We don't need to agree with every speaker today. I see such success in the discussions that provoke thoughts, and this is exactly what the discussions and dialogue is for, to provoke some thoughts and give us food for thought. Because events like this should not only deliver information, they should give us food for thought. And our own reflections, discussions, and further independent research on the answers that we need. Today we spoke, but they should also help us to orient ourselves in the information space, in political debates, and in our sense of injustice. It is not only empathy for the victims of war that drives volunteer initiatives and civil society work. It is also a deep feeling that something is profoundly unfair is happening in front of our eyes. Today we spoke about accountability, and we even mentioned the International Tribunal for the crime of Russian aggression against Ukraine. At first glance, justice seemed like something obvious, something that should happen immediately, but even creating the mechanisms for justice takes enormous effort, time, expertise, and political will. As Rasmus Christensen and Mark Shack mentioned today, that the documentation of war crimes, these mechanisms are well set, but what is missing, the missing puzzle, is accountability. And perhaps that is because accountability is difficult, much more difficult than simply looking away. But one thing is certain for all, lack of punishment is not the same as forgiveness. As Tordis Kortun Gudvadottir mentioned today, that part of the recovery for the victims of war crimes is punishment for those who committed these crimes. Very important. And Mark Shack mentioned about 100,000 of war crimes being documented. And this is only something that has been documented. And how many people don't want to speak about it? And how many people are silenced in the occupation? Sometimes I hear that too much attention is given to Ukraine. But I want to say, honestly, this attention comes at a very high cost. It costs us our homes, our families, our safety, our future. Even some of the volunteers mentioned today that they are receiving personal threats for the work they do. We too would prefer to spend our days thinking about other things. We would prefer to live normal lives and fight injustice in less existential ways. Here, I've heard in the final panel, Alina asked everyone to reflect what inspiration came from Ukraine. And many mentioned Ukrainians, public work, civil society organizations. But I also would like to pay great tribute to the international organizations, not only organizations that have been established by the Ukrainian diaspora, but also other nationals who have established organizations and are supporting Ukraine. They act from the feeling of injustice and this personal urge to join our fight for freedom is very appreciated. I thank you very much. Many of you are here today. Thank you. We would prefer not doing this, but Ukraine deserved it. It did not happen because Ukraine provoked it. It happened because someone believed that there would be no real consequences for violence, occupation, and aggression. That is why speaking about occupied territories, my should always start with the people living there. When someone says that civilians should simply evacuate, I ask you to think about what it really means to leave your home. You do not need you don't only leave behind the building. You leave your memories, your identity, your friends, your entire life. And some forms of trauma are simply impossible to fully describe in words. This is also why today matters, because we are speaking publicly not only about facts, suffering, and problems, but also about possible solutions, about what civil society can actually do to help accelerate not only the end of war, but a just end of war. And I especially want to highlight today's discussions about strengthening and systemizing our work, cross-sectoral work together. Over these years, civil society organizations, volunteers, activists, researchers, and communities have already achieved an enormous result. As Orest Bilous mentioned, that civil society has expertise, has resources, they have speed, they have flexibility. So I would like to encourage all of us for a better cross-sectoral state, civil society organizations, partnerships, and infrastructure for that. We have learned resilience, we have learned about sustainability, we have learned to continue working even through exhaustion. So here we have no excuses. What we need to know is not charity. We need to understanding, recognition, and better coordination. Institutions and democratic structures exist for exactly this purpose: to work together with society, not separately from it. Because we are not planning to stop. Today, it's only thousands of heads of their organizations are present here today, but behind our backs there are hundreds, thousands of people who is working for supporting Ukraine, and we will not stop. Exhaustion is only a stage. People who spend years defending their values will and principles cannot simply abandon them. But Ukraine cannot protect Europe alone. Europe must also help protect Ukraine. We all contribute from our own positions, whether through policy, research, humanitarian work, advocacy, journalism, volunteering, or public engagement. And that is why gatherings like this matter so much. Collaboration matters. Thank you for being today with us. Thank you for helping align our efforts, strengthen our cooperation, and also remind each other that we are not standing alone in this work. Thank you.
The head of the Association of Ukrainians in Denmark, please.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to stand here, and also it's a great pleasure to see so many people. I guess you have heard that we only had 150 people, that's maximum capacity, and there were way more people that really wanted to be here. And as we come to the end of the Nordic-Ukraine Advocacy Summit, I would like to start from probably the main things, but also something very simple, a great thank you. Thank you for all of you from the Nordic and Baltic countries and Ukraine for coming here either as participants or as speakers or as just volunteers, even photographers, everyone who helped us to make it happen. Also to journalists, also to everyone who will help to make sure that about this event, not only us 150 people in here will know, but many more people outside of this building. Also special thanks to the fellow organizers, to all these organizations that make it happen. Our 5 main organizations from Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And now, after 2 intense days, yes, we also had a day yesterday, several panels, workshop, panel discussions, and hundreds of liters of coffee. It's also quite necessary. I think we can officially say one thing. The Nordic-Ukraine cooperation and solidarity with Ukraine, it's not just a phrase on the banner, it's not something we put on the notes, it is a reality. It's a room full of people that know each other, that know who is doing what, and share each other's urgency and will not stop. What makes this summit special is that it's not just a summit. It's a reminder that advocacy is not an abstract concept. Advocacy is people. It's all of us. It's people who organize demonstrations in the rain, especially like in Norway, who does it every single day. So in Norway they have every single day demonstrations. Still. People who write policy proposals at midnights after their main work. People who support Ukraine again and again and again, even when they're exhausted, even when they think they will not have time for it, but they still do it. People who refuse to let Ukraine fatigue become an example of race. They still keep working on this. And looking around this room, I think one thing became clear. We're no longer isolated initiatives working separately on our duties in different countries. We are becoming a real network. A Nordic-Baltic Ukrainian community with shared values, shared goals, and increasingly shared strategy. And honestly, that matters more than ever. Because support for Ukraine cannot depend on a news cycle, one election, or one emotional moment. It has to be all the time. It must become a substantial, coordinated profession. And yes, sometimes it's not work. Very strong. Fortunately, Ukrainians are quite experienced in that area. What also gives me a hope that this room includes both Ukrainians and international friends, civil society, policymakers, experienced experts, and also new voices. The combination is powerful. Because Ukraine's future is not something discussed somewhere far away. It is being shaped in rooms like this, not just in Denmark, everywhere. And it's shaped through partnership, trust, and continued action. So as we leave Copenhagen, obviously we live in there, not absolutely, but as most of you will leave Copenhagen, I hope you will leave with at least 3 things. New connections, new ideas, and renewed energy. You'll see that it's not only you in your small maybe bubble, but it's way more these bubbles all over the Nordic and Baltic countries and Ukraine as well. And not because the work is easy, but because it's necessary. And because despite everything, we still believe in democratic, secure European future for Ukraine and for Europe itself. Thank you for being part of this summit. Thank you for standing with Ukraine in particular and Europe in general. Travel safely, stay connected, keep pushing forward, and hopefully see you next year in NUAS 2027. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini!
The head of the Ukrainian Association in Norway, please.
Dear friends, mange takk til danskerne. Tusen takk. We say thank you to the host here in Folketing. It's really a big honor to be here in this place. You know, Ukraine cannot hold election, but now they have a functional government. Here in Denmark, you could have election just recently, but you didn't manage to make a government yet. So in the end, maybe we're not so different. There are some differences. So we have started this NUAS 2006 preparation for 9 months ago exactly. So now today or yesterday the child is born after this 9 months. But as all parents know that it's not enough just to give birth. It's also important to grow the child, and I agree with my partners. So now it's important that we grow the child, that we make sure that these inspirations, idea, and the creativity, that it's not disappear when we go out from Christian's book. It has been amazing to see also that not only Ukrainians, but Danes, Swedes, Finns, Norwegians, they were fighting for the same things, for the same future for Ukraine and for justice. And I want to remind you that Nordic-Ukrainian cooperation is not new. Our connection is more than 1,000 years old. As an example, the King of Norway, Harald, he was married to Yaroslav, the wise daughter, Elisaveta, and she became, it was the founder of Oslo, and he had a wife from Ukraine, in Norway we call her Elisiv, and she became a Norwegian queen. And now last year, after 10 years of fighting, we have discussion with our Oslo Kommune, we actually got the monument of Elisiv, which is a symbol, and this monument is made by Danish artists. So now in the middle of Oslo, in Old Town, Gamlebyen, we have a symbol of our shared history. And that time our history begins with Elisiv, it's not new, and it's our task to make sure that people in North understand that Ukraine is not far away, that it's not so foreign, that it's not new, and deeply connected to Europe and to the Nordic region. And I would say thank you to everybody, thank you for the advocacy, and so Ukraine.
Next is the head of the Association of Ukrainians in Finland, please.
What's the difference between Finland and other countries? They're Scandinavian, and I'm from Finland. I'm Ukrainian from Finland. It means that my speech will be much shorter. During this summit, yes, you had a lot of facts, numbers, stories you can bring to your countries, to your communities, and local, and speak of that there. We hope that you come back not only with useful concepts and new ideas, new tools you can try to implement, but also with feeling that you are part of the biggest picture, and that your efforts matter, as you see. See you at next Ukraine Advocacy Summit 2027, and Slava Ukraini!
Thank you so much. And just to conclude this part, Ms. Valina Zubkovic, the head of the Nordic-Ukraine Forum, Stockholm, Sweden.
I will try to be very brief. First of all, strategic cooperation. This is something that we are working on, and I hope that the next year will be even more organizations, even more participants, and even more projects coming out of it. So this year is over 50 organizations, and we have so fantastic speakers who came even from Ukraine just for these 2 days to share experience. So I'm immensely grateful for all the participants to be here today. I'm also very grateful to our Danish hosts, Ukrainian Dialogues, Ludmila, Yulia, Ukrainian Association of Denmark, Oleksiy and Oleksiy, and you were fantastic, you were very professional, thank you a lot. Finally, Parliament. We are so honored to be here today. It demonstrates that Ukraine and advocacy and cooperation is crucial for the Danish future as well. And so thank you very much for hosting us. Max, thank you very much for being the project manager of this event. This was a tremendous work, and you've done a great job. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you so much, Lolita. I'll stay here so that you can change the position of your necks. very quick restroom break, and then we will take a group photo there in the corridor. So let's say in 10 minutes we'll meet there, and we'll figure out how to exactly set up this thing. But otherwise, thank you so much from my side as well, and safe travels, and see you again next year. The event ends here, but our conversation and cooperation continues. Thank you very much.